Hello again, I'm Robert Fithen, and hopefully you've seen part one of my 80s metal record collection video that I did. I got this huge collection of records at a great price. It ended up being about $5 each for a lot of late 80s rock, metal, and some other things that I'll show in the next video. But part one was the stuff that I was most excited about. So these are kind of the other records, the ones I wasn't so keen on. So there was a few in here that were great, but most of these are kind of the leftovers. And so I'm back in my metal gear that I had in the late 80s. This is all authentic stuff. My buff leather jacket, the fingerless gloves, the ripped jeans, the studded belt here. Maybe not the shirt, but I did get a comment from my last video that I look more like Andrew Dice Clay than I do heavy metal. And to that, I say, yo, hickory dickory dock, a collection of late 80s rock. Part one was the best, so here's the rest. Get ready for a lot of schlock. Oh! I bet you thought I was going to say cock. But let's start with White Lion. Their first one, Fight to Survive. What an album cover that is. Again, all of these, well, I should say most of these, are in mint to near mint condition. They're absolutely incredible. These look like they've never been opened or played. I mean, they've obviously been opened. There's no shrink wrap. But it look like they've never been played. I play them. There's not so much as a small tick between the songs. These sound better than brand new records that you would buy today. But that's really not saying much. But some of them are VG+, like they have been played. I don't know what the explanation behind all these are, why somebody would have all these in such great condition after these years, but I'm definitely not complaining. White Lion, Fight to Survive, their first one. This was the one that was rejected by the record company. Okay. I'm not a big fan of White Lion, never was. Wasn't familiar with this album at all. The music's okay. It's competent hard rock playing, but it is getting... I think this is like 85, so we're not quite over the hill with the glam metal, the hair metal, whatever you want to call it. But these guys sound more like they're trying to do anthems, like would-be anthems. They're really trying to sing out there about all this different political stuff and all the save the world and... come on, you can do it, don't give up, and things like that. And, it doesn't really work all the time for a band like this. I just, not that big of a fan of White Lion, never was. I mean, that's really how it is. And, not that really that big of a fan of this album or this one. This is the second one. This is their major label one, Pride on Atlantic Records. I was definitely more familiar with this album after seeing MTV back in the late 80s, and that god-awful Wait song was all the time, and that When the Children Cry was on all the time, and they're both on this album, including some other things as well. The one about, whoa, ho, ho, let's go rock and roll, or whatever the word, it's stuff like that. And I mean, I guess I can appreciate them having more serious songs like El Salvador and Cherokee, but I just don't think they're very good at it. There's no sleaze. Where's the sleaze? Is late 80s starts to get rid of the sleaze, the fun, the sex in the rock music that was the earlier stuff that I love so much about some of this stuff. Just the outright, just blatant, it's just dirty, heavy metal stuff. A lot of it I talked about in the first video. Now we're towards more like 88 to 89. Everybody's cleaning it up. Everybody's getting a little more pop-oriented. We're trying to get on radio with the singles. We're doing ballads more instead of just one per album. You got 2 or 3 on, 4 maybe on each album like this one. And we're trying to get on MTV in heavy rotation, not just Headbangers Ball anymore. And this was all over MTV. That wait, I never got a chance to love you. And When the Children Cry, which is the anti-nuclear war song. I guess we've been fighting nuclear wars, and it's it's like Armageddon now. It's a aftermath of all that. The children are crying, and the adults are like, "Hey, we tried. Did you really though?" And this guy wants to get rid of all the presidents and all the wars and just be one world together under God. Okay, well, see, there's your problem, because whose God are we under? Let me guess, yours, right? Okay, yeah. See, there's the issue. We can't just be under that. Okay, you had me for a second, and then you lost me. Not a big White Lion guy. This one's better though. Like this one. This is tribute, Ozzy Osbourne's tribute to Randy Rhoads. Of course, I'm sure if you're watching this video, you know the whole story behind Randy Rhoads. I'm not going to go into all that. Excellent guitarist, obviously, that doesn't need to be said. And this is basically a live concert. Most of it from Cincinnati, 1981. So Ozzy, for me, is, as a solo artist, pretty much at his peak. You don't have to listen to the later stuff on here, like, you know, the Mama, I'm Coming Home and all that. We're way before that at this point. And so, a great concert. I've had this on CD for years, so I'm more than a little familiar with this album. I actually do kind of think the CD sounds a little better. We're talking 1987 CBS Records here in the United States, so I don't know about the European version or whatever, but Columbia Records, Epic Records, whatever, in the later part of the 80s, they do not sound that good. I don't know what the story is. They're using recycled vinyl and all that. I don't know how much that affects the sound. Sure, it does somewhat. But I always thought that the Epic and CBS records in the U.S. in the late 80s sound very, they all sound like they've got inner groove distortion even when you're not even close to the center of the record. They all got that crispy kind of sibilant sound, and this is no exception. So, but great concert though. Great footage, that they finally released in 1987. And great packaging as well on here. You get the gatefold with a nice, just Randy Rhoads photos everywhere. A sweet note from Randy Rhoads' mom, Dolores, on here with a lot of family photos, him and his mom, and more Randy Rhoads photos and the band together. And so really nice packaging on this. Nice to have this on a big, album instead of just a little CD booklet. A nice note from Ozzy Osbourne about Randy Rhoads. And the music, though, great. Very lively concert, very exciting. Like I said, Ozzy Osbourne, 1981. So you've got the early Ozzy from Blizzard of Oz on here. Crazy Train was the song that was actually released as a single and had the music video that was on MTV, which is basically just like one of those sketch drawings of his face animated. Basically, it's a video technique. But that was a really cool way to introduce this album to everybody. And you've got the standards. I Don't Know, Suicide Solution, Steal Away the Night, which is always one of my favorite songs on there that doesn't get played that much. And then you get a few Black Sabbath classics as well. Iron Man, Children of the Grave is on here as well. Paranoid. Done, like I said, very lively, very excited. This is a band that's new. They're out there. They're young. They're hungry. They got something to prove. They're not, falling off the stage or whatever. It's not the late days of Black Sabbath. It's the early days of Ozzy Osbourne's band. So they're tight, and of course, Randy Rhoads, the main attraction there. So Ozzy Osbourne Tribute, great album. Just a little bit of sound quality issues. Maybe if you got like the UK version or German version, it probably sounds a little better. But I'm still really glad to have this just for the packaging and for the LP size artwork and all that. So excellent. And again, $5. Even though it's a double album, $5. It was crazy. But yeah. And one of the best things about buying records in a big collection is you get things that you are not familiar with at all, like this band, Laz Rocket with No Stranger to Danger. I think this is from 1985. Was not familiar with these guys at all. I remember seeing their name around, reading about rock bands in the late 80s, but I'd never heard them before. I wasn't even sure how to pronounce their name. I didn't know if it was like LA's Rocket, like they're from or LAAZ, like maybe it's Los Angeles and Arizona teaming up at last. But no, it's apparently Laz Rocket. And these guys are almost thrash. They're definitely harder than the average hair band. And since this is the mid-80s, earlier, than the White Line, all that stuff that was out in 88 and 89, this is like back when people are just trying to rock. They're not trying to get on the radio. They're not trying to get on MTV at 10 o'clock in the morning. They are just rocking out. And so I can kind of appreciate this album. This got some nice guitar work on it. It's got a lot of energy, especially songs like Off the Deep End. There's some nice riff going on in that. There's the guys right there on the back as well. All leathered out. They don't have quite the bright spandex stuff going on. So these guys are just serious rock band. And even though, Rocket spelled like that, it's kind of cheeseball. But, these guys are decent. The lead vocalist seems to stay within kind of a narrow range there. He knows what his zone. He stays in that. But not a lot of kind of memorable, like, oh man, this song's killer. This one really stands out. But just a decent rock listen all the way through. And, it's like these bands where they're not superstars, they're not super well known. It's kind of like the psychedelic bands that I love so much, discovering it. There's something great about discovering a band that never quite broke through to the mainstream, and it's kind of like, finding a lost treasure or something like that. And I love the psychedelic stuff like that. And I'm finding out that these late 80s heavy metal things are similar to that too. So Laz Rocket, No Stranger to Danger, basic, nice, just straight ahead hard rock. And of course, This album has one of those nice inserts with the lyrics and a big photo montage too, so you get that as a bonus. Now here's another one that I was not familiar with, but I'd never even heard this name before, so I didn't have any idea what this was. Tiger Tales, Young and Crazy. Now back when I was a teenager, when this stuff was first coming out, this is the kind of cover I would have run from and wanted nothing to do with. Something that looks like that. It looks like the kind of thing that's kind of like pop metal, just drenched in keyboards or something like that, but it actually is not. It's pretty hard rocking stuff. It does credit a keyboardist named Pepsi. But yeah, this is actually kind of hard rocking, straightforward rock stuff. It's really kind of good. Disregard this cover. It doesn't really sound like that. It's got everything you'd want in like a late 80s, mid 80s kind of hard rock thing. These guys I found out are from Wales, so maybe that gives them a little bit of credibility there. Yeah, Tiger Tales. Definitely never heard of this band before in my life, and this was in the collection, so I thought I'd throw this on. Glad I did. I was really surprised just how direct, hard rockin' this was, and it's kind of like things like this, like I was saying before, are just better to hear now. I love finding these obscure bands that never really made it, never had heard of, and I think I appreciate them a lot more now than I would have if I would have heard this when it was first out. Similar to like what I was saying about the psychedelic records that I love so much. Those obscure ones that they weren't anything when they were out. They never made it big. And now they're very collectible. Now I love them. And just like the psychedelic checklist, this has got the heavy metal glam rock checklist, hairband checklist, whatever you want to call it. Psychedelic stuff, always looking for the fuzz guitar, looking for the, the stereo effects going on, looking for the kind of psychedelic lyrics and otherworldly kind of lyrics. With stuff like this, always looking, you're going to have that whammy bar on the guitar going, so you can check that off. You've got the double entendre lyrics, you got that, you can check that off. You've got the suddenly falsetto vocals for 2 words out of nowhere. You can check that. This has got that as well. Kind of like, can I make you an offer? You can't refuse. You know what I'm talking about? Like stuff. Shout out to Grim Reaper fans out there. I already had that record. But yeah, Tiger Tales. They've got that. They'll be singing along. I was riding in my car when I saw this. Haka! So yeah, Tiger Tales, Young and Crazy. Actually, do not judge this by the cover. This is pretty straightforward hard rock from the 80s. It's actually pretty decent stuff. London. And Don't Cry Wolf, cry London instead. This is a band that was in Decline of the Western Civilization Part 2. And they were saying how these guys always have these guys in their band because these guys have been around, I think, since the 70s. And they always have these band members that will be in their band for like one tour or one album or whatever. And then they will go off and be in a really successful band. And that just keeps happening to these guys. And these guys, are more of like, hard rock people know who they are, metal people know who they are, but they never broke that mainstream success. But they had a lot of members that went on to do that. So that's kind of their story there. But yeah, the album itself is okay. Side 2, much better than side 1. But I wasn't really, it was okay, basically. I think the production has a lot to do with it. This was actually produced by Kim Fowley, who, if you don't know who that is, you could make a whole video on that guy. I'm not going to go into that. He had quite a storied career as a producer, to say the least. Hard rock people would probably know him best for the guy who was behind the Runaways. He was their kind of, mastermind or whatever. But he produced this. I don't know if it was the production or the engineering or whatever, but it sounds like the vocals are kind of separate from everything. You can really hear like the reverb and everything really clearly. And then the guitar, like especially the rhythm guitars, are mixed way down. It's got some decent guitar work on it, and it's got some decent songs on it, like Runaway, Lover, Side 2. That's pretty cool. Got a nice guitar riff. But again, it's the production that makes this album kind of suffer. They do cover the Beatles' "Oh Darling." We didn't need that. Did not need that. But yeah, London. Huge band in metal circles or whatever, but again, never got the mainstream success. There they are on the back there. Does this have one of those inserts? It does. It does not. But yeah, again, glad to finally hear an album from those guys after hearing about them for so long. But it's all right. Actually, I prefer this. I actually prefer this album over the London album. This is a lot more hard rock and stuff, straightforward. Speaking of hard rock, straightforward, come on now. It doesn't get more than that, than Motorhead and their live album, No Sleep Till Hammersmith. This is kind of an out-of-place album in this collection. It's from 1981, but the reason it was in there is because I think this is the 1986 reissue on Profile Records. Still sounds great, though. Top-notch recording. This sounds really good for like a live Motorhead album. I expected this to be kind of lo-fi, more kind of raw and, just everything just blasting out. But this got some really good recording techniques on this for this Motorhead live album. I was already familiar with, had the CD. I remember listening to this one time, streaming it like years ago, and the first song, Ace of Spades, a huge song. For some reason on that particular streaming service, they just replaced the live version with studio version. I never understood that, but this is all definitely live. And it sounds raw, it sounds real. There's feedback in places and missed notes and stuff. So I love that about live albums. I'm not really into the live albums that were, just studio concoctions with cheering thrown on it. That's not what this sounds like. High energy, obviously. It's Motorhead sounding exactly like Motorhead. That's how you can tell when a band is raw in the studio, when their live album sounds pretty much the same. I'm not talking about people who like rearrange songs or have different arrangements for the live version. I mean when they're trying to sound like they sound on their studio albums, but they can't because their studio albums have so much processing on them and so much After Effects and whatever. Motorhead is definitely not like that, and this is just insane. It's Motorhead. I mean, you gotta love Lemmy Kilmister. He was actually in the Decline of the Western Civilization Part 2 as well, but they're much bigger than that movie. But yeah, We Are the Road Crew, Overkill, awesome version of that. Ace of Spades starts the whole thing off. You've got him saying, we're going to slow this down and do a slow one right now so you can mellow out. And then does Capricorn, which, of course, is not a slow... It's slow for Motor Death, but it's not a slow song. They don't have slow songs. Well, except for that... I ain't no nice guy after all, but don't worry, that's not on here. It's too early for that. But yeah, No Class, Iron Horse, they're all on here, all the classics. And I think this is probably their top-selling album, the live album. So glad to finally have this on vinyl after having the CD for many years. Not really much to say about this. You know it, you love it, it's awesome. Motorhead, No Sleep Till Hammersmith. Halloween, got a couple of Halloween albums I've had for years. Keeper of the Seven Keys, of course, is the classic. But I did not have their debut LP, Walls of Jericho. So it was great to finally have this. Again, just killer thrash, German metal. I'll probably talk more about the other two Halloween albums I have whenever I do my German video, which I plan on doing that at one point. I'm actually going to try to talk about my favorite German records while speaking in German. So we'll see how that works out, or if it does work out. You'll see either way, but I'm going to try to do the whole video in German. So it's going to be quite an attempt. I'm sure. Tell your German friends that they've got a comedy video coming up for sure. Walls of Jericho, first LP, but not their first release. Their first release was an EP, and that one starts off with somebody, just like dialing a radio. You actually get to hear a clip of Billy Joel tell her about it, and then you get to hear the Silver Shamrock theme song from Halloween 3. And this one starts off with the music to that, which is also London Bridge. But if you've only heard this album and not the EP, it's probably not London Bridge they're doing. It's the Silver Shamrock from Halloween 3. But yeah, great stuff on here. Some of the lyrics kind of brutal, especially that Phantom song on here. It's not for the faint of heart. But hard thrash metal. Again, like I was saying about some of the other albums in the other video, it's so fierce, so thrash, so just hard-hitting. Sitting down on your couch listening to the record, this is actually something that I think plays better on the CD. Is you can crank it up in the car. I've done that before, flying down the interstate in a thunderstorm. I still have that memory of doing that. Heavy thunderstorm, flying down the interstate with Halloween's Walls of Jericho playing on a CD. That really did it. That does it. The records, I'm glad to have the big artwork and everything, but if you've got the CD of this, that's, put it in your car, fly down the interstate, of course, do the speed limit, and check this out. That's the way you listen to some thrash metal on Combat Records. But yeah, glad to finally have the record with the big artwork for Halloween. And don't forget, the German video will be coming up at one point. So when you buy a whole collection of records, you're going to get some really just great stuff. You're going to get some things that you already have, and you're going to get some stuff that's not so great, like Demals. from Chicago. Way to put Illinois into the metal scene here with this album and this band. I don't really know too much about these guys, except for that's what they look like, and that their album is not very good. They did have a song called Destroll, like D apostrophe stroll, like Demals, Destroll. That was on that Rhino series. Remember that? It came out in the late 90s called Heavy Metal Hits or something like that. Each one had a different like pants on the front of it. All the heavy metal classics from the 80s and some stuff maybe that wasn't so huge. And then their song was on there, and it's like the worst song on the whole collection. So the album is not much better. It's really kind of a pedestrian sounding. There's nothing like, it's not like it's horrendous or anything. It's just kind of like that, Demals, the week is what this is. And that album cover is pretty terrible too. Bonham, the disregard for timekeeping, of course, is Bonham's son from Led Zeppelin. And, so he makes the band named Bonham. So you got high expectations with a name like that. I remember this coming out and everybody just making a huge deal about how this was Led Zeppelin drummer's son, and he's seen in The Song Remains the Same movie as a little kid playing with the drum kit, and this guy's just going to kick ass and just take names, and wow, this is going to be the event. I mean, obviously a lot of pressure put on this guy, but I don't know who decided to name the band that, but maybe he put the pressure on himself. But it's pretty much just like the mall. It's pretty just pedestrian, late 80s, really not even hard rock, more like just mid-level rock. The big hit was called Wait For Me that used to come on the radio all the time. I did not like that. I thought it was really weak. The rest of the albums, it's okay, but it's nothing to get excited about. I mean, a lot of keyboards, a lot of just that real late 80s, like I said, just mainstream rock sound. And I don't know what happened to these guys. I don't know. I think they may have put out a couple more albums. He looks like a priest on here. But anyway, it's all right. You'll find both of these at the next record show that I do, by the way. Pass them on to somebody who can appreciate them. And another one is this one, Mr. Big. And not a fan of these guys, really. I only knew 2 of their songs, Addicted to That Rush, and then, of course, My God, To Be With You. Thankfully, I was not subjected to that on this album. Addicted to That Rush is the first song. But these guys, this is 89, so this whole, like, hair metal, whatever you want to call it, glam rock 80s thing is starting to die off, and you can hear that it's getting a little stale at this point. And, I was never a fan of these guys. This is from a collection, so it's not like I picked this out. But I thought I'd give this a try after all these years and hear the full album all the way through. And yeah, it's your basic kind of more in the bar band realm than the glam rock kind of thing going on here. It's not quite as fun. It's not quite as sleazy. It just doesn't, yeah. And you can even tell on the back that these guys have, they're kind of getting into the more of the looking like guys who are just kind of walking down the street type of thing. Not so much the over the top makeup and hair and whatever, but and a little less interesting this album is than a lot of the other ones I've shown. So didn't really do much for me, especially the second side where it just really falls apart. It goes into this awful ballad called Anything for You. Obviously they're trying to get to the junior high prom soundtrack with that, but they do it on their next album, To Be With You. Don't worry about Mr. Big. A name like Mr. Big is ridiculous. And then a song on here called Big Love from Mr. Big. And you think, okay, well, they're finally going to get a little sleazy with that and over the top. No, it's just your basic song about, I don't know, he's in love big time or something like that. Kicks, Midnight Dynamite. One thing I noticed about this collection, being that these are all in like mint or near mint condition, like a lot of them look like they've never been played. I mentioned that. It must have been from like somebody who was affiliated with like labels somehow. Like they either worked for a radio station, but then again, none of these are promotional. So it wasn't that. Or maybe a record store or something, because with the exception of a few, most of these are either on Enigma, Metal Blade, or Atlantic Records. So 2 Atlantic records here in a row. Kicks, Midnight Dynamite. They're kind of still getting their footing, I think, with this album. It really is more of that sing-songish kind of vocal that I don't like. That kind of up and down thing. I'm not a big fan of that. But this has absolutely top production, though. I mean, this sounds really, good as far as sonically. It really opens up wide and, you know, blasts out. But the vocals and the way that they're sung doesn't really do it for me. I love some of the double entendres. They've got the fun stuff going on. Bang, bang, balls of fire. Sounds like something that Kip Winger would have written. Oh, wait, Kip Winger did write it. Okay, so yeah, this is, you know, I like their other one that I'm going to show you better than this. But one thing I wanted to mention about this song, of this album, you know, it has songs on here, Layin' Rubber, and Cold Shower, and Red Hot, you know, Black and Blue, and whatever. And also ends with a song called Sex. So forget about the double entendres. There's just sex, sex, sex. Lyrical geniuses, these guys from Kix. I don't really get this cover art either. This looks like a bootleg. You know, I usually the bands from this era have really, you know, nice covers. Like, that look like they were really thought out by an art department or something. And this just looks like, picture this guy singing into a, you know, a stick of dynamite or whatever. But what's his name? Steve Whiteman. He's just, it looks like a bootleg from a concert or something. But anyway, Kix and Midnight Dynamite. I definitely prefer this one. This one's a little later. Blow My Fuse. I think this is 1988. This came out, and when I was in high school, a lot of guys had this tape, and so I was much more familiar with this. And this still has the top production, but the vocals are a little less sing-songy. They're very screechy, though. Steve Whiteman has very screechy kind of vocals, but always liked the song Cold Blood. Just very fun. The double entendres, the sex songs are all over this. You know, of course, the album's called Blow My Fuse, so what would you expect? But, yeah, Dirty Boys and, you know, Piece of the Pie. I don't think they're talking about, like, you know, apple pie. It's a precursor to Warren's Cherry Pie, I guess. But he just wants a piece of the pie. Yeah, this one is the one that has the big ballad from these guys. Don't close your eyes. You know, so you can skip over that one. But the rest of this is kind of fun. Again, top production. Just like a lot fun stuff. Fun stuff. What more can you say? It's Kix and Blow My Fuse. I don't know that much about these guys, but I do know that, man, this cassette was everywhere. So glad to finally have that on vinyl. And again, pristine condition. More obscure stuff. Back to the, you know, away from the Atlantic recording group and more into this one. Omen. With Warning of Danger. Just in case you didn't know what the word omen is, they give you the actual definition literally in the title. These guys, you know, more of a thrash rock kind of thing with that very sinister looking cover with the blue snake. This is the kind of artwork I'm talking about. You know, like Blow My Fuse with the things going on and the snake on this. And that's much better than some guy, you know, full album cover. But yeah, Omen, they're obviously a little more in the thrash realm. Very echoey vocals, though. It's almost like the vocalist has to, you know, be overcompensated with the effects on this a little bit. Decent rock music. It's not nearly like as sinister as, you know, deathly as you would think based on that cover. So maybe some people got this and were a little disappointed it wasn't quite as evil as the cover suggests. But like I said, decent rock music. The band does a great job on this, and glad to have this. I didn't know anything about Omen before I got this. I hadn't really heard of these guys. So I love having the stuff that I always grew up with in high school, wanted to hear the whole album, like the, you know, the Kicks and whatever, and then also stuff like this where I was not familiar at all. So glad to have this because, you know, for one thing, like I said, I love that cover artwork. Some songs in here are kind of like, I guess it's kind of scary when you hear some guy going, you know, make me your king, I will rule with an iron fist. You know, that's a bit frightening. So, you know, there is that. But yeah, Omen and Warning of Danger. Again, Metal Blade Records. Speaking of labels, this is one you don't see very often. Judas Priest on Atlantic. You know, there were quite a few Judas Priest albums in the collection. I already had those, but I did not have this one. It is the 12-inch single for Johnny Be Good. Yeah, this was on their Ram It Down album. This was also part of the Johnny Be Good movie soundtrack, the one where Anthony Michael Hall got all buffed up for the first time and was playing like a football player, and he was all being scouted by all kinds of different colleges or something, and they all tried to woo him to go play for their team or what. It was not a good movie. I remember I saw it like when it first was, like the first week it was on VHS, and it was, everybody hated it. It's not very, nobody was seeing Anthony Michael Hall like that. But anyway, Johnny Be Good, this, I'm sure somebody's going to put in the comments, oh my God, their favorite Judas Priest song ever. That's fine. But it actually is just kind of there. I mean, I remember it being horrible. I listened to it again on this, and it's just, it's whatever. You know, it's another Johnny Be Good remake. And this one, instead of being the Elton John disco version, or, you know, some other, this is the 80s heavy metal version, courtesy of Judas Priest. And you also get a live version of Rock You All Around the World from Turbo, and Turbo Lover as well in live versions. And so, you know, I have this now. I don't think this is very common. I don't think it's super, like, collectible or whatever, but it's something I didn't previously have from Judas Priest, and now I have it thanks to this collection. All right, and so to wrap things up, I just want to go through these last albums really quickly. I haven't had a chance to actually listen to these records yet, but I wanted to show you some of the other hard rock ones that were in this collection, like these two from Tesla, Mechanical Resonance, and of course the great Radio Controversy for 87, 89. This one especially is kind of hard to find on vinyl. Glad to finally have these. And Tesla is always going to have a special place. I've mentioned this in one of my other videos. Always going to have a special place with me because they were the first band concert that I ever worked as a radio person working in commercial radio. First station I ever worked at, WQLZ in Springfield. These guys came to the Sangamon County Fair. First, like I said, first concert I ever worked. So great memories of that. I actually talked about that in another video, so you can check that out. It was the one where these songs have a special meaning to me. I talked about the Tesla thing. Fate's Warning. This is an early one from these guys. Awaken the Guardian. And later on, they're more of like a death metal type act, I believe, if I remember correctly. I remember hearing Fate's Warning in the 90s, but I think this is a really early one where they still have the high vocals up here. So I look forward to hearing some really early Fate's Warning, see how that sounds. Got a couple from Loudness. Not familiar with these guys' music at all, except for the one song. This one is Thunder in the East and Hurricane Eyes. I do know Rock and Roll Crazy Night, you are the hero tonight, from Japan. So, you know, you got all these Japanese metal fans, and so Japan returns the favor with the band Loudness, so I'll be checking these out to see, you know, if they all sound like Rock and Roll Crazy Nights. A couple of albums from this band I'm not really familiar with called Anthem. Don't know much about these guys at all, actually. So leave me a comment in the comment section of what I should expect when I listen to these two albums. They are the band Anthem. So look forward to hearing these at one point. And then finally, Zodiac Mind Warp and the Love Reaction, Tattooed Beat Messiah. And yes, I know this goofy-ass album, and I'll probably be putting the record on at one point and listening to it. But yeah, it just absolute silliness is what this is, and could only have come out in the late 80s, early 90s. So yeah, but another one that you don't see on vinyl too much. But yeah, Zodiac Mind Warp and the Love Reaction, ending this video with a Z. Maybe I should have started it with an A. But yeah, so that is the hard rock metal collection that I got from the or the hard rock metal part of the collection that I got off of Craigslist. I still can't believe I got all these for about $5 a piece. Again, all in near mint or mint condition. There's a few VG pluses in there scattered, but mostly these are in absolutely stellar condition. A lot of them look like they've never been played. Album covers are in great condition as well. And the next video I'll have for you will be concentrating on the albums that were in that collection that I'm going to be checking out that were not hard rock and heavy metal. Stuff like REM, XTC, that Why Can't Tori Read album was in there. Tori Amos early stuff from her. That is, I mean, $5. That was in there. I got a David Lee Roth album to show you that's a little bit different. A couple more soundtracks. A bunch of stuff coming up in the next video that's not exactly hard rock, heavy metal type stuff. So I will not be wearing any of this, and I'm sure you're thankful for that. Once again, I'm Robert Fifth, and thank you so much for taking this journey with me through my collection that I absolutely scored. Right on cue. There he is. Thank you. Yeah, hopefully I'll talk to you again soon.